What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. Now there's chaos on Raw, as Sasha Banks and Naomi have reportedly walked out on the company for real, leading to major changes for last night's episode of the Red Brand. How did this affect last night's show though? Join us now as we look at this week's edition of the Red Brand, as well as the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including full coverage of Sasha Banks and Naomi's story and the real reason behind their walkout, the wrestlers' reactions, Edge picked this NXT superstar for Judgment Day, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our non-wrestling channel, Incredible. As always, we won't recap the matches, but just provide you with the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, Asuka is awesome. Asuka is just insanely good, as seen in last night's main event match against Becky Lynch, where she made one seamless transition after another. Granted, she had a great opportunity, but it shouldn't be obvious to everyone that she's at the top of her game. She's arguably the best in the division right now, and we can only hope that she gets another run at the championship, because an Asuka title reign could shake things up regardless of whether she works as a face or a heel. Although it looks like the WWE is still going with Becky vs Asuka, an Asuka vs Bianca program is also money. Her potential has been unrealized on the main roster, and it's time for the WWE to capitalize on everything the Empress of Tomorrow has to offer. Number 2, is necessity the mother of 5-star matches? Now, it's been said that necessity is the mother of invention, and it was certainly true last night, as the last-minute changes necessitated by Naomi and Sasha's walkout forced the WWE to change its 6-pack challenge to another Asuka vs Becky Lynch contest to determine Bianca Belair's challenger at Hell in a Cell. Now, that match would have been good, but last night's main event was great and clearly a pay-per-view level match. And much like 2019, when a large number of superstars were stuck in Saudi Arabia, or detained, depending on what you've heard, it forced WWE to book on the fly by having NXT invade SmackDown, leading to a fantastic show and a great storyline. Last night's last-minute changes forced the WWE to rise to the occasion. Perhaps the next time Vince McMahon rips up a Raw script moments before the show, he should just tell the writers someone walked out. Number 3, Liv Morgan in the Bullet Club. Now, is Liv Morgan aligning with AJ Styles and Finn Balor to their Bullet Club-esque faction? And while it's too early to tell, it's an excellent move and could keep Morgan from playing the eternal victim and provide Styles and Balor with a teammate to deal with Rhea Ripley. We're hoping the WWE avoids the predictable path of Balor turning on Styles or vice versa, and builds a proper faction war with Styles, Balor, and Morgan taking on Judgment Day. With Judgment Day talking about building itself up, Styles is going to need all the help he can get, and Morgan's presence is the perfect spot for her, as the women's title picture is far too crowded for her right now. Number 4, Raw getting all the talent. The apparent addition of Los Lotharios to Raw, not to mention Lacey Evans, is great for Raw, especially if the WWE keeps Los Lotharios an excellent tag team together, but it's kinda bad for SmackDown. There's no word on why the Blue Brand has seen these recent trades, but it's good news for the Red Brand. Number 5, giving Veer an opponent, not a victim. Major props to the WWE for giving Veer Mahan a capable opponent rather than his job of victim of the week. While we aren't claiming the WWE listened to us after we complained about Veer's endless array of ass competitors, it was time to have him face a named talent. Now, while some might argue that shouldn't have been Mustafa Ali, especially if WWE is serious about pushing him, the Miz's presence as special referee made it obvious that Ali didn't have a fair match. On a side note, it was kind of funny watching Austin Theory ask Veer to put Ali back in his submission hold just to get a selfie. What an asshole. Number 7, always a pleasure. Last night's Riddle vs Jimmy Uso bout showed that both wrestlers never disappoint. While we aren't a fan of endless singles matches between members of opposing tag teams, all 4 wrestlers can go, and it's obvious that the Usos have a singles career ahead of them if the WWE ever wanted to pursue it. And I'll see you in hell. Was anyone surprised to see Cody challenge Seth Rollins to a Hell in a Cell match? Well, probably not, but the WWE crafted a strong storyline to justify a second rematch between the two men despite Cody having won the first 2 encounters. His powerful promo summed things up with the American Nightmare, comparing Seth's dynamic debut in The Shield in 2012 to Cody's WWE woes around the time, as Cody told the fans and Rollins he's not going to waste his second chance. If their previous 2 matches are any hint of what to expect, their Hell in a Cell match should steal the show and become a Match of the Year candidate. But that was the good. What about the bad? Is number 1, is she or isn't she? Is Lacey Evans really a heel, or is the WWE still trying to figure her character out? No matter how you look at it, her return is beginning to stall, as the WWE doesn't seem to know whether she's a face or a heel. On one hand, she's showing signs of a babyface by supporting the armed forces and saying she's no better than anyone in the back, but the subtle heel mannerisms are there, as seen when she gives the audience some unsolicited advice on being a winner. Now we'll just cut to the chase and say subtlety has never been the WWE's strong suit, and it needs to present Evans as a babyface or heel and stop wasting her time with her character. Otherwise the WWE Universe is going to get confused and bored with Evans. Number 2, so far so bad. Speaking of wretched returns, Alexa Bliss's Raw return has been limper than an overcooked spaghetti noodle. While the universe is undoubtedly happy to see Little Miss Bliss return, she needs to be doing more than beating up Sonya Deville. As for Bliss's new music, we've heard better stock audio recordings on YouTube. And number 3, a stale spot. Last night's cage door spot was used to protect Omos and Bobby Lashley to a certain extent by keeping the door open, no pun intended, for a rematch. However, has the cage door spot become overused? Last night's clash in the cage was good, but the finish is a trope that's on its way to becoming as tired as the ring breaking. Interestingly enough, that's what was supposed to happen a couple of weeks back. As WrestleVotes tweeted, over the course of the past week, there was an idea for a collapsing ring angle during the cage match tonight on Raw, with Omos and Lashley. I've heard that the idea got squashed over the weekend. Good. It's way overplayed. Considering how the WWE employs the same tropes multiple times on shows, fans may think this trope isn't being overused. But that was the good, the bad. What about the downright ugly? Yes, there is an ugly, as it's anything but professional. Now we don't usually discuss a wrestler, in this case wrestler's conduct affecting a show, but in this case there's no getting around that Naomi and Sasha Banks' walkout impacted last night's show. While we're only beginning to hear what happened behind the scenes, as more on that in the news, there's no excuse for Naomi and Banks' behaviour. With a few exceptions, such as when Stone Cold Steve Austin walked out after he refused to job to Brock Lesnar on free television with no build-up, wrestlers are obligated to do their job. This isn't the first time Banks has reportedly walked out on the WWE, which suggests the problem is more than just the WWE. Corey Graves' comments about the two unprofessionally and unceremoniously walking out were likely fed to him by Vince McMahon, but there is a ring of truth to them. What you guys think of last night's Raw though? Let us know in the comments down below. Now let's move on to the news. Now what is going on with Naomi and Sasha Banks after they walked out on Raw? What was the reason behind it? Now there seems to be 3 sides to the story, and keep in mind that this is a developing story and that the adage "there's 3 sides to every story, yours, mine and the truth" likely applies here, but in this case the details are limited to what actually happened. Let's start off with the WWE, which actually issued a statement at WWE.com regarding the walkout. When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into the WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand, placing their tag team championship belts on his desk, and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with 2 of their opponents, even though they had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live television show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event. Now WWE hasn't delivered some main events or even matches in the past, so why are they announcing this one? Things sound a little sus at this point, but as we'll see, the WWE's account is disputed by some of the reports making the rounds. That doesn't invalidate the WWE statement, but it does raise questions about its accuracy. The fans haven't heard anything official from Naomi and Sasha Banks, but it's known that the boss has unfollowed several WWE social media accounts. According to WrestlingNews.co, Bayley, Becky Lynch, The Usos, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Vince McMahon, and the official WWE account, Banks is currently following 6 accounts. Naomi, a couple of fan site accounts, John Cena, Tamina Snuka, and a cousin Snoop Dogg. Interestingly, Twitter user AdidasHead88 is getting attention after posting a lengthy message that some see as an unofficial response from Naomi, who follows the account, and possibly Banks. We'll wait for an official response from Naomi and/or Banks, but we'll mention that the gist of the tweets is that Naomi and Banks were apparently unhappy with the direction of the women's tag division, especially after they had sacrificed singles pushes to pursue the belts. If the tweet reflects one or both women, it also claims they had no problem working with Doudrop and/or Nikki Ash, but wanted to work a tag team program with Doudrop and Ash. What could be the real reason behind the walkout? So now there's the backstage talk and rumors surrounding what happened. Let's start off with a report from PW Insider's Mike Johnson. The word making the rounds backstage at the taping is that Sasha Banks took issue with some of the plan created for the original main event, a Raw 6-pack challenge to determine Bianca Belair's next challenger at Hell in a Cell. Banks had a meeting with Vince McMahon, and the belief among those we've heard is that when McMahon didn't choose to change direction on plans, Banks wouldn't back down on her issues and made the decision to leave the taping. Fightful Select provided details on what happened, and here's an unabridged version of the report which noted Naomi and Sasha's walkout forcing a number of changes. Those we've heard from at tonight's WWE Raw, WWE Tag Team Champion Sasha Banks wasn't satisfied with creative associated with her plans for the evening. As Fightful Select reported, Sasha was to be involved in a six-pack challenge with Naomi, Asuka, Doudrop and Nikki Ash. During the Raw broadcast, it was announced they then changed to Asuka vs Becky Lynch and said that Sasha Banks and Naomi left the building. Fightful's report goes into detail as to what supposedly happened when Sasha spoke with Vince about the situation. We're told that Sasha Banks had a meeting with Vince McMahon and voiced a displeasure about a situation and wouldn't budge on her stance. Vince McMahon was also said to be unwilling to budge. As for Naomi, we haven't specifically heard that Naomi was involved, but that she and Sasha Banks left before the start of the show. Depending on the accuracy of the reports, it's easy to summarize Naomi wanted to show support for Banks, especially if Naomi was scheduled to receive a singles match against Belair. Fightful concluded, it's worth noting that at the time of the WWE Raw rundowns went out, there was no assigned producer or referee for the main event match. It was also highlighted in red, indicating a change could be happening. We were told that there were hastily produced segments to set up the change, but they were also reflected in the rundown that were handed out before the show. There's talk that Banks' dissatisfaction runs deeper. According to WrestleVote, sources note that WWE's statement regarding the Sasha Naomi walkout is just the baseline of the details. The tension leading up to the walkout was palpable all day, with both superstars upset at something that transpired. More details will come out in due time on this. Meltzer seems to agree, noting on the Wrestling Observer Radio that Naomi was gonna win the match and challenge Bianca Belair for the championship on the pay-per-view, so it wasn't about them getting buried in the match or anything like that, but there was something that happened and it may have to do with a contract situation with one or both of them. But it was both of them. I think that some of it was like Sasha was the one and Naomi left with her, but from what I was told, it was both of them. It wasn't like one followed the leader or anything like that. But what about wrestlers' reaction to the walkout? Well, a number of wrestlers, including former superstars, shared their sentiments on social media. Mia Yim just tweeted hearts at both Naomi and Sasha. Big Swole tweeted, "You must find the courage to leave the table if respect is no longer being served." Former WWE superstar Aiden English just tweeted, "It's a work." Well, according to PW Insider, this is not actually a work. They mentioned, "What I can report is this is not a work." A couple of sources that I trust would know and said definitely that this is not a work, and the reporting that PW Insider and Fightful early on in the reporting were accurate. The people that I communicated with directly in WWE tonight after Raw indicated that this was Sasha and Naomi working together, but leaning a little more towards Sasha being the leader and them working each other up, but Sasha kind of leading the way into making this decision. By the way, there's no history of Doudrop or Nikki having a reputation for being rough in the ring. This isn't a Nia Jax type of situation. That's not a thing with them. I don't think there was an issue with Asuka or Becky either. There's not a history of personal issues between them, so the idea that they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents is not something that I would know the details of, like who and why. I can just say that I asked around and there wasn't a pre-existing issue with Naomi and Sasha and anyone in that match. Behind the scenes, there's not a ton of instant sympathy or a thought of like, finally they took a stand over this injustice that was going on. It's more like, what? Where did that come from and how did they get themselves so worked up over this? And finally, Edge wanted an NXT star for Judgment Day. And last but not least, it looks like Edge missed out on getting a promising NXT star to join his Judgment Day faction as the WWE released NXT 2.0 star Haaland, aka Parker Boudreaux. Ringside News reported, the report noted that Edge had pitched for Haaland, Parker Boudreaux to be in the group, and the idea was being pushed until the decision was made to release him. It was added that it's still a big mystery to everyone in WWE why Haaland was let go from his contract. Now it's unknown why Parker, whose uncanny resemblance to Brock Lesnar had more than a few observers calling him the next big thing, was released. But there you have it guys, our review of the Red Brand as well as the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.